Before starting an open conversation with our experts and friends, first we have like a short presentation by Lorenzo and Colm. Lorenzo and Colm are PhD researchers working with a big group. They're going to tell us about it actually right now. Do we have the presentation, Yanni? So they're working in the Coral ECHN program that we are running about collaborative workspaces in suburban and rural areas. So this is almost a 4-year research program that will try to address all relevant issues about hubs and collaborative workspaces. So it's a bit broader. In rural areas, which is really important. And I think we will start now a bit with a short presentation about the project and some initial thoughts and findings, if I'm not mistaken. And then we will move to a discussion. Yep.
Thank you very much, Vassilis. So as I was already saying, we are researchers of this project that is basically a European project, part of Marie Curie fundings. And it's called the Coral ECHN Project, as we can see from the title, the impact of collaborative workspaces in rural and peripheral areas. So next slide, please. I guess many of you know already co-working spaces and in general collaborative workspaces is a phenomenon that has been interesting Europe, but overall all the major cities in the world since the early 2000s. And we can see here from the graph how exponentially it basically grew in these years, and how we can basically find nowadays everywhere in all the main cities a co-working space, but even in small cities. We can see also from the other slide that is mainly an urban phenomenon, so we can find co-working spaces mainly, like the graph is showing here. In the main cities we talk about from 60-70% to almost 90% of the co-working spaces are located in the central business districts, or overall in let's say the edge of the cities, but the peripheral ones are just a small percentage. But we do think that there is a kind of a gap in the research about the potential outcomes of having these collaborative workspaces in rural and peripheral areas, and how this can actually impact local development and also can favor let's say the fight against the challenges that rural places are facing, like brain drain, or a lack of networks, and lack also of investments from institutions. Yeah, so Colm can actually continue.
Yeah, so the overall mission, I guess, then of Coral is basically to unpack these latent dynamics and the impacts of collaborative workspaces in rural and peripheral areas. And yeah, so we want to be able to unpack these and then show how these spaces can act as tools for local development and also influence policy making to show how we can integrate these hubs or collaborative workspaces for different means of socioeconomic development. So first a bit about Coral and the network that we have. So it's pan-European. So essentially we have 15 PhD researchers, which Lorenzo will go into in a bit more detail in the next few slides. But so, as you can see, we've made a nice map here. So in Austria, we have Impact Hub Global, Otello. We also have Paris School of Business, Politecnico de Milano. Then we have 2 of the Leibniz Institutes in Germany. So both the IRS, based in Erkner, also in Leipzig, the Institute for Regional Geography, Creative Saxony, who are based in Dresden, yes. And then also Pantheon. So both myself and Lorenzo are based in Athens, and we are hosted by the European Creative Hubs Network. So although the European Creative Hubs Network, it is no fixed spatial place as it's a network, but we are based in Athens because we're tied with Pantheon University, who will award us our PhDs should we be successful.
Yeah, we did a bit of a ping-pong presentation, so we're going to just kind of exchange the microphone. But here we can see these are the 15 early stage researchers. Also, me and Colm are somewhere there. And the idea is like basically to try to address this topic from different angles. So all of us are basically gonna research on a specific topic. I know that there are too many here to explore, but we're gonna give a brief overview a bit later in the next slides. But the idea is like everybody's gonna basically address like from different angles the aspects of co-working spaces in rural and peripheral areas. And also, if you're interested in some specificity, I don't know, maybe precariousness or employment, you can even like go on our website on correios.eu, and you will find like the specific ESR, the specific researcher that is kind of trying to address a topic. So maybe if you're interested also after these, you can try to get in contact with them and exchange some information. Also, I would like to stress the fact that we are researching, but we are trying to also apply different methodologies while we do that. So we're going to be analyzing the phenomenon of working spaces both from a quantitative method point of view, but also on the qualitative point of view. And we talk about GIS, so basically trying to have a bit more of a geographical perspective that maybe can be linked also to the taxonomy of co-working spaces, but also like me, for example, some econometric analysis and let's say using a bit more of statistical tools to try to quantify the effects of co-working spaces. Somebody today was saying actually in some presentations that it's hard sometimes to actually quantify something that usually is qualitative. I must say that it's a challenge, but it would be nice to have like both perspectives. So like trying to have numbers and maybe try to also triangulate the quantitative solutions we can find with like some more like qualitative analysis that can be performed with interviews, participant observation, and many other methods. And also, of course, with field work. So we're going to go around. We're going to have like more or less like something like 30 case studies in co-working, in collaborative workspaces, localized in different regions in all Europe. Like we're going to try to cover as many countries as we can. So of course, like also trying to connect, let's say, the academic world with the practical world that in some way, like some of you is representing in this moment. It's very important. So we do hope that we're gonna like stress like this partnership, let's say, between like the observers and the practitioners, let's say. Next slide. And then this, I think, yeah, you can go with it.
Okay, I have permission. So with Coral, we basically have three main levels of analysis. So firstly, it's the impact on the local socioeconomic environment. Number two is more so based on the organization, so both on the individual worker and then also on the enterprise. And then finally, it's basically like the policy dimension. So by being able to identify, say what the needs, what the challenges are of these spaces, and then to be able to recommend recommend policy supports for collaborative workspaces in rural and peripheral areas. So firstly, this is, as we say, on the local socio-economic environment. So here's me, familiar face. So for example, we have different, all the projects are connected with this general scope, and then there's different nuances. So for example, my personal project, I'm trying to look at the relationship between collaborative workspaces and social innovation. So how can hubs address different social challenges in rural areas? Also looking at how hubs maybe can act as like community infrastructures, social infrastructures, so similar to like how a town hall might act or public libraries. So just investigating to what extent we can view this. Then different projects could be looking at like territorial resilience and entrepreneurship, just for an example. Then on this second level, it's, as I said, the more organization level. We've different researchers looking at, for example, gender dynamics, precariousness, and workplace well-being.
And then also the other five are a bit more focused on like also the implications for collaborative workspaces regarding like the relationship with local development, so with policymakers in less developed regions and localities where like let's say we can call them like left behind places. And these five researchers, and also I'm in these five, we're going to try to a bit more like unpack the dynamics of basically regional development, so like also connecting it with a bit more like of policies and what are, let's say, the impacts also on the economic, social, and environmental perspective. And then we can just say, like, to wrap it up, basically, overall, we would like to, at the end of this 3 years project, try to give, like, to the practitioners, but also, like, for the academic perspective, a bit of, like, the best practices that we found in Europe. So, like, showing basically the best situations in rural and peripheral context. Sorry. And also to shed light on the common issues that people in rural places are sharing. So can be, for example, like a lack of networking, or like the presence of few fundings. And overall, like, we like also to draw some policy recommendations, and maybe hope that these recommendations can help institutionalize and strengthen the role of co-working spaces in the local development agendas. So thank you very much for listening, and we are here if you have some questions.
Great. Lorenzo and Colm, thank you very much. So this system of PhD researchers are working actually for us, and they're here so that we can exploit them in the future, and their work, of course. Please use the website. There are all the contacts there. Contact them, but they will be also doing the opposite. The next years, they will be contacting all periphery and rural hubs, try to extract information from you. Please provide whatever you have available, and please help them throughout the research, because this is going to be a really also valuable tool to also, promote rural hubs and relevant policies. So I would like also to invite for our open discussion Sylvia Amann from Inforelais and our project Creative Sleep. Sylvia, I'm very happy to have you here. Adam Rusiłowski, that's correct. Okay, from the Future DiverCities Project, which is another project that we're working on together. And of course, the mayor of Guacil, and Anna. You won't join us? Why not? Come on, I feel you have valuable information for us. You don't want to? You're shy? Okay, okay, we're going to explain. So thank you also. We had the opportunity to follow through a bit through this very interesting presentation yesterday about your village and the museum and the foundation, of course. And I think it was also setting the tone. It was a real inspiration about how we can act on a local level. I think that one thing I would do is to share, I've written also a short mood setter for the conversation, so that we are all in the same kind of context. So within the cultural and creative global communities today, there is a broad discussion about the current needs, urgencies, and societal challenges. New global policies are established to address them. Within expert and stakeholder discussions, there is a tendency to take those topics as a common and identical need. But it looks that even though the topics are universally accepted and often adopted, their successful incorporation into everyday practice is not that simple. Almost every time they come into the local sphere, they need to be adapted creatively by blending together with local specificities. This creates a new innovative transformation and evolution approach of generalized ideas into a new dynamic and agile best practices. Local creative communities address global challenges through localized creative innovation practice. We should monitor and document those tailored solutions, since they are the direct answer and tools for global change. So this was like a mood setter in my thoughts on what's happening with all those overarching themes that we hear every day in all conferences, discussions. So about like sustainability, which is like, I think, a usual theme, about education. We had an extensive panel earlier on. And I think that every time, also for me, but I think for every one of us, we struggle kind of applying into our local kind of environment and reality. And also to onboard into these kind of ideas the local people. And I noticed in your presentation yesterday that you managed actually to involve the local communities. How did you achieve that? And do you think that this is something that happens instantly? You have to trick them to put them in the process? How do you involve local communities? And are they positive from the beginning? Or are they suspicious, for example? That's what we have experienced, for example, that they might be suspicious of what we're doing and why you're doing it, and it takes time.
Anyway, thank you very much for the invitation to this panel. Well, things have to be done in a natural way. That's the thing. I mean, we cannot impose. Sometimes when we try to do like rural innovation, we try to impose our viewpoints into the other people. And the key in Genalguacil has been how the neighbors were the key. I mean, it always been there, but the problem is we tend to underestimate the knowledge they have. And then what we did was like to incorporate them by doing different workshops, bringing artists to live with them, to share their experience. I mean, the artists, when they arrive in Genalguacil, they're not thinking about the final work, because by living with the people in Genalguacil, sharing their experience, doing research about different kind of things, they get to the end thanks to those people. And then from the beginning, when they see now the artwork, they see a part of themselves, or they see a part of their family. So they relate. The kids, they relate, and they are actually part of the project. And as I said yesterday, the key for us was when someone comes to the museum, a local person, they recognize themselves. So, and to innovate, you need to have the local knowledge. You have to have also the problematic of the territory, and also you have to incorporate the needs of the territory. So that's been the key.
But yes, because you've been running the project for several years. Do you remember the very first day that you had to pitch the idea? How were the people in the place and how it was accepted? Was it positive or was it kind of critical, for example?
Just to give you an idea, when it all started, and it was totally different like what it is nowadays, I was a kid, so I was part of it. Just think about, nearly 30 years ago, I was a kid, which I was looking forward the artists to come, or artisans to come to Genalguacil to do something, because we used to experience things we had not done before. So, and it gradually grows more. And as I said, at the end of the day, when the artists leave Genalguacil, they are part of the community, they are part of the family. So it's natural. I mean, you don't need to impose or have that distance. They eat together, they share their dinners with the people, they come to the village, they participate directly in the artwork, and always, you know, when you do things with the people, for me, it's always the key.
But you were lucky enough having from the beginning also institutional and state support, which was really important aspect. You had the massive support from the state, I imagine, I'm just kidding. I mean, I would like to have your view on this. I mean, how it started, and if you had external support or not really, and how you were perceived by maybe local government or, yeah.
Well, basically in rural areas, we have a threat, and it's done. None of the governments or institutions believe on us. It's like rural innovation is to put an egg into the rural area, and it's not like that. We have a bird in Spain which is called the cuco, which it does put an egg in a different nest to someone else, to another bird to raise it. I mean, that's not innovation. And that was the problem. What happened was all the different institutions tried to kill us. Why? Because how can you do a project of this dimension with very few people, with just a village, with most of the people are over 65 years old, and you are relevant in the artist scene, and they are not there. The people who spend millions in culture. So it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of believing and doing things in the right way. And I can tell you really, really hard story. It's how sometimes in politics there is no limit. It's like in 2018, we had a budget from the local government in Malaga, Diputación. They had agreed 80,000 euros for the project. A week before the project, they said, no money. Just imagine how you face it. It's so hard. I went back to Genalguacil, and I had to talk with the rest of the team, and we said, okay, we have to carry on. The neighbors came to the office saying, with a little envelope with a bit of money, 500 euros. This lady with 500 euros, when you know her pension is 600. I mean, it's when you know the responsibility it has for the community. I mean, but at that day, also, I thought, okay, we need to be totally independent. We cannot depend, our life, our oxygen cannot depend on governments or institutions. We need to be totally free, and we have to be self-sustained. Nowadays, I can say very proudly that we are self-sustained. And innovation, that was the key. We had to find tools which made us totally independent. And how did we do it? With a team of professionals and the local people. Formation and education for the younger people, because they are the future of our village. Trying to bring back those who left the villages, who had to leave. And like now, one of my cousins is coming back to Genalguacil after 2 generations. Then they had to go and live in England. So always for any project, I was talking to Anna, a lady from Ukraine. She was asking me about that. And the key is to fight and never give up. If you give up, you lose. And it doesn't matter whether we get support or not support, we don't give up. Because our future and inspiring another villages, it's there. And I'm very proud to be born in the countryside, be from a small village, and to have a proper education, and to go back to my village to give all I want outside my village. Anyway, thank you.
I think that Adam, you can grab the microphone from there. You have already a reaction.
Yes, something that resonated with me most was the word that haven't been said so clearly yet, that is freedom. Because really, I hear what you do is you liberate the people, the inhabitants of your place from all kinds of stereotypes and kind of imposed roles that they have. And I just like to stress that, because I think our conference is about the power of creativity and the power of the arts. And this is, the essence is that liberation from all these limitations that we have, and all the developments that are going in a way against the cities, against the humanity, let's say. And I really love your case, and I'd like to now talk a little bit about Future DiverCities, the project that just started last week in Florence with a kickoff meeting. And in this project we have 8 European cities and organizations that already have some experience with working with empty spaces in the cities and connecting these spaces to the more vibrant elements of city life, but also elements of rural, or at least the kind of nature element that somehow gets pushed out of the cities. And I'm privileged to be in the project because of my experience with Ashoka. Ashoka is a global organization of social innovators, social entrepreneurs, and it has been ranked as the 5th social impact organization in the world. And the philosophy of that network is in a way simple. It's everyone's a change maker. So whatever we plan in terms of transformative change, and by transformative I mean not something that is just mitigation, not something that is adaptation, but it's really coming up with added value, of completely new reality, sometimes negotiated with the community. I like the metaphor of dancing to the music that has not been created yet, or sometimes tying your shoes while dancing. Future DiverCities is this kind of project where we are allowed to experiment for 4 years. So that's really luxury, but with certain strict rules about community engagement. So there will be community-based research to really address the needs. There will be this feedback to change things as we go, just to make sure that the values are updated as well, because they change. They are also dynamic. What also I wanted to say that in this project we are at the stage of creating our manifesto as well, and the manifesto has to be co-created for sure, to include all the diversities, all the differences, and even geographically, culturally. We are already an interesting consortium. And another element of principle is to lead with empathy all the time. And that's another thing that is the result of aesthetic learning, I think. And it has been said today, but again, I wanted to stress it and invite you to check on the progress of our project. Creative hubs will be responsible for communications. I hope that we will be visible, but also I encourage you to kind of contact us and advise us, but also seek our advice, especially on that change-making aspect. So, thank you.
But as I perceive Future DiverCities is like an inclusive place-making project, isn't it? Something like that, if I would put it in a nutshell.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the organizations have already certain proof of concept. This is why they were invited to the project. It's quite important. And the inclusivity is quite taken for granted, but of course, again, will be strengthened with that Ashoka methodology, as you know that social innovators who have been helped with that methodology, 97% make it to the policy level, policy change level, which I think is very important, and you know, with the values of equity, with the values of creative processes themselves, this will all be nicely aligned.
Yeah, very interesting. But Sylvia? Hi. I know that you're really experienced and have a broad understanding of the impact of culture and creativity in rural spaces and areas, correct?
Yes, I must go back as long as Miguel. 25 years ago, I was the CEO of a regional cultural umbrella organization for 70 regional cultural initiatives, covering an area of 1.5 million inhabitants in total. So the whole area was covered and is still covered by these cultural centers. And from that moment on, I was active in regional cultural development, but mainly from a specific point of view, and this was also mentioned in your research plan, that you also want to influence the related policy. So also in Creative Flip, I'm more the political person in that context. And so we were discussing quite a lot already with regional politicians how to come up with a forward-looking, regional cultural policy. And it was at that time quite silent on the European level. So I know from other EU countries where there were similar initiatives, but this topic did not really play a big role in EU cultural policies. But it became more and more important, and this is maybe already an interesting point, from the rural development programs. So we have for many, many years, I would say even decennials, in the context of the innovative rural development policy of the European Union, also debates about culture and the role culture can play for sustainable and integrated rural development. So we can now ask why suddenly this topic came to the fore again, and more prominently, I would also say, and also more covered from the cultural sector. And I think maybe last element which brought it further to the interest was certainly also the pandemic, because people were more looking locally, and so in that sense it was somehow, again, one of these idealizations of the rural space. We can still discuss about that. And one other thing is, and this is a phenomena we could, for example, already also observe during the first election of Macron in France, where also came up this notion of la France périphérique, and in that sense, kind of problem discourse. So everything what is outside urban spaces is somehow perceived as problematic for the democracy, not able to produce innovation, and that's also how the major urban centers often and the political class is communicating with these spaces. And I think there is already one of the major underlying problematics, because if there is a certain territory which defines all what is valuable and where are the trends and what we need to follow, and another territory hears only about deficit, and you are not having that, and you are not having that, and you are not able to do that, etc., etc., I think we started from the wrong side. So I think a first step, and maybe to end here with my first statement, is that we have to overcome these urban-rural stereotypic views. So I think this is crucial in order to come up with something more meaningful for the future.
This is very interesting, and nowadays that we see people also moving from one to the other, I think that that's make it really interesting. But whenever we talk about culture and creativity in rural spaces, we're talking about the effects and the impact that culture and creativity have to the rural spaces. What about the opposite direction? Do you think that there is some impact from rural areas within creativity and culture itself? I mean, do you think that culture and creative professionals that go to rural areas mine or extract something there? Is it something that we see happening? Because I think that it's unfair talking that rural areas need culture and creativity. I think it's a two-way thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I think with a notion more of encounter and exchange, it would be already a starting point. And it's not only about going people there are already people there. So in that sense, also as Miguel has said, people are there. They have inherent creative talents and ways of doing things. Afterwards, it's more a question, who defines the norm to which you have to refer to? But this is something which is largely dominated by the urban space for the moment. Yeah? But if we come up with encounters and exchanges, and reciprocal valuing what everybody and each person can contribute, I think then we can both benefit more.
Yeah, it's true. Yes, go on, Adam, of course.
Just a short addition here. From my experience and a little bit of research, what these creative people from rural areas have to offer is also the very strong sense of belonging and the roots. And this is that, you know, people from big cities really miss more and more. So this is the great value that again can be brought through culture.
I must partly contradict. It's not that I think we can say that in urban centers people are not having this sense of belonging, and in more rural or non-urban contexts they have a strong feeling of belonging. Also, this depends on the various settings, possibilities of interactions. Is there, for example, a cultural center where they can meet, where they can exchange? But this applies for many quarters also in urban areas where there is no place of encounter. You even, or there is one and you have a lot of encounter. I think we should stop trying to put these things into these kind of boxes, and also understand, I think it was already said this morning, there is a diversity of urban spaces and there is also a huge diversity of non-urban spaces. And in that sense also all types of kind of institutional settings, of cultures of encounters, of traditions still alive or not being alive. Yeah? Afterwards, it's more a question, wherever I'm active in a territory, what are the specific needs and the specific features of that territory? I have first to understand the context in which I am working, and then to have the answers whether it is rural, urban, peripheral, etc. And also an additional thing related to periphery, on a globe, this depends only where you are standing. Because we define that, for example, the far north in Europe is periphery. But no, from an Arctic Circle perspective, it's center. Yeah? It depends only where we are standing. We have to overcome that.
Yes, of course. Colm, you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I could just compliment what Sylvia was saying. I think a lot of the time when we think of, as you're saying, periphery, or even when we describe rural challenges, rural development challenges, it's often in relation to the urban. So, you know, these are such as like a lack of economic activity, a lack of networks, a lack of something. But this is in relation to how, you know, people in the urban perceive a lack. But then if you look at rural areas and look at not exactly what's lacking, but what is actually there, who is there, what's going on, I think you see a different picture and a different perspective on, as you're saying, what is periphery, or what is, you know, what assets are there rather than what is lacking. I think this is quite important to keep in mind.
But I think that all places have the local specificities that we've been talking about that are kind of really valuable. I mean, that set the tone also, that can also spark innovation, creativity, creation. We have here, for example, from Prato, Loto Zero. They are in an area where textile and textile design has been really strong in the past. Am I right, Tessa? And yeah. So the exchange there also is something really important, and the noding idea. I think that we should somehow modernize the way we see world, and instead of seeing every area detached, ask as a whole, as a society. But this is, of course, sometimes too idealistic, and we have to find practical ways to achieve that. And I always felt strong that hubs are this kind of structures that can provide this kind of global and local connections, which are so important. But Colm, because, and Lorenzo, you just came back from Syros, you had a late summer school there. And I was really curious to hear from you, because there is no such place there. There is no collaborative workspace in Syros. I don't know if you've noticed, because we had a meeting there about this kind of structures, and we were also in an industrial venue, really cool industrial venue, but they use it as a cultural center and they do mostly wedding events there, but there were no communities around that. And even though it was a dense place, I mean, it's an island, it's touristic, overexploited, many people present, many tourists present, but there wasn't a connecting thing that would kind of activate other things. Did you ever think of that when you were there, for example?
Actually, I would stress the fact that being like Syros an island with many tourists, sometimes it's not the island itself that is necessarily making things because of the locals, but sometimes they have to kind of adapt also to what are the dynamics of tourism and also of, let's say, digital nomads or like lifestyle migrants, if you want to call like with different definitions. We were actually there in a taxi the second day, like we were in Syros, and we ended up in a taxi with this couple. They had a kid with them, and so I was just chatting with them and asked them, "What are you doing here? Like, why you're in Syros? Are you on holiday?" And they told me that actually they're both like digital workers that just like to change setting every 2-3 months and move from Portugal to Greece to Costa Rica, and like this type of, let's say, typology of worker. And so for this reason, they were in Syros, and both of them actually, they wanted to spend 2-3 months on this island in Greece. And they basically told me that they're part of this network of, it's called like a boundless education, something like that, boundless life, where like this association is providing for the children of these parents a specific education system where like they can basically try to follow this the same structure, a standardized way of learning in different spaces. But with this, it also comes parents with needs. So they will also need to have a co-working space or some collaborative workspace that they can actually go and work. And so what I want to say is that I think also we should think of the dynamics of what type of workers are there and what type of life they want to live, and especially in an island like Syros, I think it's very important to try to track the changes and how to see also like how the island is responding to people that are looking forward to actually spend more time on the island and performing also this digital working lifestyle. So that's my perspective.
And then to add to this perspective, so just for some context, I guess, so Syros, it's an island like 4 hours away from Athens. It's in the Cyclades, and it's quite different to many other islands because it doesn't have amazing beaches, first of all, which is a very good characteristic of a lot of islands. But what it lacks in beaches, it has a really dense city and a really nice city. It's really urban, really developed. But yeah, as Vassilis said, there's nothing there in terms of hubs or in terms of locals. So we have this dynamic of tourism and the digital nomads, but then in terms of space for locals to meet, to work, etc., this is definitely lacking. And because Syros has this kind of, you know, a level of urbanity, it's strange. And even we met a mutual friend of someone else who was with us at the school, and she was from Syros. She was after doing a PhD in London, and she'd returned to finish writing. And you know, we were talking about our PhD, and she was like, "This is crazy. Like Syros needs a space, a hub where I can do my work, where there's other people on the island. There's also other people who are from Syros and might live in Athens because of work, and if they have a, you know, not even in terms of work, but in terms of art, etc. Like, there's no place like this." So I don't know. It's maybe watch the space. I guess maybe there's probably someone with an idea somewhere who's visited Syros, maybe to do something, but it's strange. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Colm. But Miguel, you must have had also artists that made your village home, no?
Yeah, in fact, you know, in the last, especially the last 6-7 years, quite a few artists, they've moved to, and also artisans, to live in the village. In fact, this summer, an English guy his father was really famous English photographer, he opened up his small gallery in the village. He did research about how many people who were interested in art and culture were visiting different villages on the area, or even towns, and he thought the best place is Genalguacil. So we feel very proud, and also because there are potential clients coming to Genalguacil, because obviously people who've been dealing with galleries and selling art, it's not easy. It's not easy, but the key in Genalguacil is being that, you know, people know than the people who come to Genalguacil, because there are lots of curves and it takes you quite a while to get there. It's a big filter. It's a big filter which we love. I think it's the best thing, that road we have, to just let few people who are really actually interested on what we do and the people who will live there to come. And this morning I had an interview talking about that, how the artisans have thought about a small village, a rural area, a place to produce their work. Some of them, they sell it even online, and natural fibers, and also the opportunities, because it is cheaper to live. It's a lot cheaper. And we have fantastic school, so you can have, the kids are free. They can run on the streets, you don't need to worry. And the kids in a small village, they belong to everyone. It's beautiful, you know, it's how, it's different lifestyle. I mean, in big cities, parents are worried, I cannot leave my kid here, or can I do this? They are free, they run free, they can stay until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when they have the concert, and they know they are protected by the neighbors. So it's different lifestyle. So that's why many people are coming there. That's why we're changing that, falling down to 40 to even 60% a year in the last 40 years, to grow 3-4% a year. And that 3-4% is part of these artists and artisans.
Wow, that's so inspiring. Sylvia?
Yes, maybe also to add on this example, and in my case, of course, one from policy making. I was advisor for our Austrian Cultural Ministry in order to come up with a new funding program for territories outside the big cities. And what we did, we initiated the first ever cooperation, which was also then really sealed with a cooperation contract between the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Agriculture. And this was a program which was first running now in the previous EU funding period, also co-financed with EU means from LEADER, from the Rural Development Program, and was now integrated again in the now starting new funding period. And the content of that program was transnational cooperation in culture outside big cities. So in that sense also to see that these opportunities for exchange, and especially also for international exchange, are much more limited in these areas than in the capital cities, for example, and to help with the specific funding program to further connect. And there, as this is linked also to LEADER, it has this integrative, sustainable approach. So in that sense, it's not meant to contribute, for example, again, to this touring of international artists, in a way, flying in, flying out, and being here for a second or for two. It's really meant to come up with collaborative cooperation projects for which last 2 years with foreign partners on different topics and issues, really also connecting the different parts of the population, and but to bring the innovation and the inspiration from all kinds of arts, culture, heritage side. Also, in that sense, not to say only that this innovation can only be produced by artists. So it's a wider area of innovation providers or inspirators which can be mobilized. So in that sense, I think it's also something which is crucial in that context, that also the cultural administration opens up and cooperates with their counterparts and comes up also with more solid and long-term elements in order to improve the existing or most of non-existing cultural policies for these areas and with these areas.
Thank you. I think it's time to open also to the floor here. I mean, does anyone want to jump in? Yep, of course.
Where was Thank you. I'm from Boom Studios, which is a creative hub in the north of Ireland. And we have had this conversation about an idea of being a mothership and that there could be satellites of our hub in the local rural areas. We're kind of, last year we were a town, now we're actually a city right on the edge of a rural peninsula. So I suppose my question is, what is our role? How do we can see the opportunities, we can see the need, we can see the partners that we could potentially work with, especially around the idea of collaborative workspaces. So what is our role as having experience and network to help to fulfill those opportunities?
Is this a question to the group here? Wow. And you expect us to answer that? Definitely. Does anyone want to take on the challenge?
Anyway, thank you for the question. That's always what I want to talk like insider now. I am someone from the countryside, someone who lives in Genalguacil, and when you approach to me, to my village to live, it's a feeling of I don't want people telling me how I want to live. I want people telling me what I should eat. I don't want people. But if you approach to me saying, I want to make your life better, I want to make my own life better. So what do we all get in return, you know? Social benefit, pleasure, whatever. So I think it's a challenge. It's approaching, you know, to the same level, because there is a big mistake, which is when people approach to villages thinking they are the people, Noé, who's going to save us. And it's not. I mean, if they are there, it's because they've been the ones who kept the village going. So they have a lot of knowledge. Therefore, just ask them. Doesn't matter where you go, ask them how you should do it. You have the technical part, you have the knowledge how to develop, but tell them, ask them, approach to them saying, I want to do this, how should I do it? I think it's the best way.
Any more questions? Yeah. Or comments, or unfortunately we don't have a lot of time, but
I have a short comment or question for Colm and Lorenzo, and the reference you made to Syros Island and your work there. Syros is a particular island. I will just add a few words here as well, like for the people that are not from Greece, because it has a very, very strong cultural life. It has two very known festivals, a film and an animation festival. It has also a very good university department on culture and technology. It has a lot of activity, let's say, on the topics that we are discussing in this conference. So the question that I would want to bring in, and maybe I got you wrong here, is like the fact that maybe there is not a co-working space there or a hub there might have to do with the fact that there is already so much activity there, which is something that comes in contrast to the other areas that we've heard many interesting things about, like the beautiful and very successful case of Miguel, for instance. Syros is a totally different paradigm, so I would like to have your comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and also thank you for pointing this out, because I forgot to mention it when I was describing Syros. Yeah, like when we were there, I was really shocked that, yeah, there's like this international film festival there, street art festival, there's a lot of cultural things going on, which is really, really, really nice. It's also a good point and a good question, and I think you have a good point in the line of thinking, and it could be certainly true. But on the other hand, if I think, for example, like in Athens, which has like so many, you know, international festivals, music, culture, so many things going on, and there's still hubs there, you know, there's still hubs in a lot of big cities with a lot of this going on. So I think it's not like hubs are there to not necessarily compete with these cultural events or like, you know, and obviously I know you mean that they're there and they're flourishing, so there's almost no need, but I think a hub could only, well, potentially like benefit, not necessarily like, yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be amplified, but I don't know. I think if there was one there, it could connect these festivals and create new linkages, new networks potentially, but it's a valid point. Lorenzo, if you want to add.
Maybe it's good to kind of try to understand a bit better also the dynamic of the island. So which type of people are maybe more willing to stay on the island. And I also feel like when I was there, that it's not a classic Greek island. You have a lot of culture there, and also many people there are willing to stay there like permanently. So I think this is a added value for a co-working space to thrive in such a situation and such a context. And I think we just need to, let's say, what are the next steps for the island. And I'm sure that in the next years there will be something happening there, because it's kind of a melting pot of Greeks coming back to kind of look for a semi-rural place like Hermoupoli, for example.
Yeah. Daphne, thank you for the question. It was also part of the conversation I was trying to kickstart, so thank you for your intervention. As I said, oh, yeah, of course, Pepe. Hi. Can you speak loud? Yes, I can speak loud. Yeah, great, I know.
They put some wild bicycles in the wild, in the wood, and they are trying to create this economy in this village. The question is maybe for Miguel, but it's open. Well, because you said you have to take advantage and to use all the knowledge that is there. But well, I know pretty well that there is a lot of things like that, but there is also a lot of negative dynamics. There is in the wild. You have poaching, you have like illegal chopping woods, to selling it, this kind of and you have to get involved also these people. So normally, I don't know, many people, when they come there, they are very idealistic, with this uncompromised vision, but how do you cope with these negative dynamics and compromise things to get involved also these people that are important to make relevant changes? Will be the question.
Well, obviously, you know, as I said, you know, normally there are some negative feedback, but that negative is also to learn. I mean, to learn to build a better future. And I think we have to turn all these negative things, or even when you said illegal things, I mean, we all have to fight against it. So if someone comes to say we are doing something wrong, I mean, that's fine. I mean, we need to all learn. We don't know everything. But I think, as I said before, just mixing in, blending in, you know, the person who comes and with us, and then try to build a better future for the economy. That's the key, really.
Mm-hmm. If I can just say quickly what we already discussed also in Future DiverCities, it's part of methodology of Ashoka to organize hospice. So certain things have to die with dignity, and also arts has a role to play. And we laugh, but you know, there are good practices around working with people who put on resistance, because resisting to change is already a value. It's very precious. So turning it into engagement is possible, and we have some good practices. So I'm happy also to talk to you about this. Thanks.
That's great. Unfortunately, we have really exceeded our time as always. So thank you for your contributions. Just to tell you that we will go on working on this topic a lot the next years, and also that one of the priorities of the network is to create a subgroup, especially for rural and suburban areas. So we're going to do our best because we know that it's something that's needed amongst our communities. Thank you very much for your contributions and for being here. So maybe we should quickly move on to the next topic. I think we have been doing circles around it all day, but we are really talking about innovation and about sustainability all times, even through learning, through doing, relating to the location. And I want to invite the two next speakers to come and join us. They are part of our S for Fashion project, and are the two creative entrepreneurs under the creative name New Kind of Blue. I remember correctly? Great, I forget names, so welcome.
Hello, how are we all doing? End of the afternoon of a long, inspiring day. We're happy you're staying to listen to our short presentation. So my name is Sandra Nielsen. I work together with Tim van der Loo. And as correctly said, we have a design studio. It's called A New Kind of Blue. And it's based in Berlin. We started this in the beginning of last year, of 2021. Next slide. Oh. Why didn't I get that? Okay, super, cool. With the starting point in circular fashion, we work with finding local solutions to global problems. This is our material circle, so we work with changing the notion of recycling in fashion, in the fashion industry. So we take something, an existing product that doesn't have value anymore, break it down and create a new one of equal value. And this is very important. Particularly in the fashion industry, recycling is something that's not looked at positively upon. It's something that has negative connotations, from downcycling, you know, like moving carpets or painting carpets and stuff like that is how we see fiber's second recycled life. So we work with jeans. It's an item that has gone from being a very durable workwear and become a part of the fast fashion industry. And in that sense, both declined in value and in quality. And at the same time, it's something we all have at home, and it's a resource that we use a lot and could reuse. So this is what the industry looks like today. 97% of all the new products that are made come from virgin feedstock. That means everything that goes into this huge industry is based on something that we produce from agriculture or oil-based just for this. You can see in the end that after use, 73% of this goes directly to the landfill or it's burned. Up in the top, there is like a little drawing of showing that less of 1% is recycled to something of equal value, which is called closed loop recycling. And we think this is a huge issue. We really want to change this methodology. And we do this with working with old jeans that are used and worn, and we want to make a new product out of it. And that's called New Blue. So what we do is we take the fibers from old jeans and we press them, turn them into a fleece, and then use embroidery. And with this approach, we can both make fabric on the roll, but we can also do embroidery directly on the fleece with the patterns needed to make, for example, a pair of pants, which we have a video we want to show you.
I think you have to click further, no?
Ah.
So this is a bit of the process.
Yeah, so the point is here there is a roll where there is a pattern embroidered on it. The embroidery stabilizes the fibers. Everything, the surrounding fibers of the pattern dissolves when it gets into water. We can recollect it and then reintroduce it into our production cycle.
So here you see also that the non-embroidered parts disintegrate again. So they're going back to the state of a fiber, and this fiber can then be reintroduced again into a new cycle of developing the fleece and making new jeans. And then what comes out is, this is for instance a cut part of the front, I think, from a jeans. Yeah, that's it.
Do we have? Oh. Good.
So the project started as my master thesis in Berlin in the Art Academy of Weissensee. And I worked in 2019 for a year in a charity organization that was dealing with second-hand donated clothing. So a lot of clothing was donated by the citizens of Berlin, and there they ended up in this organization to be, in the end, given to the homeless of Berlin. At that time, we were dealing with 40 tons of donated clothing, and only 50% was actually useful to give to the homeless. And there I started to research more into, okay, so what's left over, what is seen as waste, and how can I convert that into something new? So seeing waste as a new value and changing that into a new material. And one of the biggest part was jeans, because it's such a democratic garment in that sense, because everybody owns one. It doesn't matter which generation you are, from which part of the world you come, that's almost everywhere. And there was a lot of questions also with donations, that things are out of style, too big, worn out, torn, stains, and this is kind of the resource we used to initiate this project. So since then, New Blue got some recognition. In 2020, it won the Federal Eco Design Awards for young talent. And last year we got funding from Reframe, which is an innovation program from Horizon 2020, where we, together with Textile Institute, Research Institute, ITEX, and Company Care Applications, were looking into sustainable and zero waste dyes and finishings on the New Blue textile. We use there like the newest technologies to look into give the New Blue material new expressions and colors without compromising the environment. So everything is dyed, completely absorbed by the garments, so there's no wastewater and there's no chemical waste. It's just really absorbed to the garment, which really fits in the concept of New Blue to keep it a zero waste and sustainable material. Currently, we have got funding from As for Fashion to look into the first steps of New Blue, and that's the development of the fleece. So the fleece before it's getting embroidered, and this is a very challenging step because we have a very disruptive plan over here. Most of the garment manufacturing happens with weaving and knitting, but here we are really focusing on non-wovens. We are here again working together with ITEX in Spain and with a Dutch company called I Did. in The Hague, and they are helping us to source recycled fibers, jeans fibers, cotton fibers, look into what's actually in this material because it's a post-consumer material, and then see how we can develop a fleece out of that and try to create a supply chain and in the end, hopefully, a product.
Yeah, so with New Blue, what we're trying to do is, it's actually a pyramid. In the bottom line, we render out waste as a concept. We take it in the beginning, but as we can reintroduce everything we make into our production cycle, it's not anything we can call that anymore. It's not waste anymore. So we have a take-back model, which also means that we have to have a relationship, an ongoing relationship with our future customers. But beyond that, we work with local solutions. That means we work where we are the experts, where we know the environment, where we know who we can work with. And of course, we think this is an impactful and really interesting way of making a production model, especially within fashion. But we cannot do everything ourselves. So we are currently discussing what does the future look like in terms of having a more geographically dispersed business model. How can we collaborate where other people can adapt this model to the places where they live and turn it into something that makes sense to them, to the people around them, to the resources they have in terms of waste, but also other things as space, machines, all of these things.
Exactly, and I think it's also very exciting to say that this is kind of in Berlin, it will be a model of the first proof, and then this knowledge can be transferred to different areas in the world where there's also different parameters and settings, so they can use different materials and different machines to imply or like apply a different kind of attitude towards the recycling of New Blue. Maybe it's New Pink. Or something else.
And obviously we don't have any experience with this, but we think it's an interesting model and something that for many kinds of businesses makes a lot of sense, also in terms of equality, autonomy of production, urban production, maybe also non-urban production. So yeah, if you have any ideas, inputs, know of something, or have some thoughts, please share them with us later.
Yeah, we want to thank you for our presentation. Please connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can scan the QR codes and just talk to us here. And if you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. This has been really inspiring. Just to say a few things before moving on. So New Kind of Blue are part of the S for Fashion project where ECHN is leading. We're really happy because it's a pilot project aiming to establish the right ways and to observe the ways that sustainability is integrated within the fashion sector. So we're really excited about this project, but also I would like to tell you that right now we are establishing also a thematic subgroup with members working on fashion, and of course sustainability will be part of it together with other themes relating to fashion. We have already some members that are working on the topic, so right after the elections that are coming tomorrow, it's one of the very first things that will be soon announced. And then you could enlist yourselves and kind of be active if you are interested in the fashion sectors. So now moving on, thank you again very much. Nice to see you guys again.